Welcome. You're attending a webinar presented by Approval Max and Xero. Today, our panel are discussing the topic, how to protect your business with stronger financial controls. I'm Heather Smith and I'm your moderator for today's session. By attending the session, you'll gain insights into the following. You'll get an overview of financial controls in small business. We shall refer to the survey results conducted by Approval Max and by Xero. We will explore ways to strengthen internal controls and avoid common financial issues. We'll hear some real practical examples, and we shall find out how Approval Max and Xero can boost financial controls in businesses. Towards the end of the session, we shall have time for Q&A. So I encourage you to ask any questions you may have in the Q&A area, banter in the chat area, questions in the Q&A area, okay? So to start with, I'll let you know a little bit about me. I'm speaking to you today from the land of the Jagera people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm a chartered accountant and certified bookkeeper and BAS agent, and I've run a management accounting digital practice for close to 2 decades now. Specialise in the business apps ecosystem, and I produce an accounting apps newsletter, accounting apps podcast, and I moderate the accounting apps community. So that's enough about me. I'd like to invite our expert panelists to introduce themselves. So let me jump to the slide that I should have gone to. And here are our expert panelists. So in order of the slide, can I ask you to share who you are, where you're from, and what you're bringing to today's session? If I can, let's start with you, Mina Berry, if that's okay.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be joining and co-hosting this session on this awesome panel. I am working for Xero in a senior partner manager role. So I work with the ecosystem and app store side of Xero. So that's wonderful app partners, including Approval Max. And I have in total been at Xero for 8 years in a previous role as well. And prior to that, I was a small business owner. I ran a cafe in inner city Sydney. So I'm very, very passionate about this topic. I will mention a few personal stories and why I think financial controls are absolutely vital for a business. So thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Mina. Cass, can I get you to jump in and share your story?
Thanks, Heather, and thanks for having me along today. Really looking forward to it. My name's Cassandra Scott. I run a bookkeeping practice out of Brisbane and have done for almost 19 years now. I can't believe it's that long. Not only do I run a practice and we work with clients using cloud-based software right across Australia, I also represent Approval Max as their head of bookkeeping in the APAC region as well. On top of that, I'm also working with bookkeepers and peers within the industry on a day-to-day basis through different forums that I facilitate around bookkeeping conversation. So I think I'd like to think that the perspective I bring here today is one of somebody that works in business. So as a business owner and what I need to do to mitigate risk in my business, what I see from a client's perspective and how we can have conversations with clients about that, but also sort of a general perception about financial controls across the industry as well. So looking forward to diving into this deeper.
Fantastic. And Brendan, can I ask you to introduce yourself as well, please?
Thanks, Heather. Good morning, everyone. So I'm coming to you from Sydney in the Sutherland Shire. It's not raining at present, so that's a little win for us. So I own and run an accounting firm based out of Miranda called Next Dimension Accounting. We focus predominantly on working with non-for-profits. And we've been in a real growth phase over the last couple of years. So I can definitely bring to this conversation what we're seeing from those clients be on board and what they had or didn't have in place and how we've been able to make some improvements with some of the software we'll talk about today. Like Cassandra, I also wear another hat. So my role as head of accounting at Approval Max for the APAC region as well has allowed me to get a better understanding of how Approval Max is working with their partners and getting involved in conversations like this to get people to understand how Approval Max can plug into their business or their accounting or bookkeeper firm and make a real difference.
Fantastic. I'm delighted to have all of you here today. And as I move the slides, oh, there we go. We are here to discuss some of the survey results that from the survey that Approval Max conducted at the end of 2023. And so on the screen, you can see the results here. And we also have some results from Xero that Mina is going to bring to the conversation. But I'd like to take some time to deep dive into these results, and I'm keen to hear your reactions. To start with, which of the survey results closely align with your expectations, what you're seeing out in the industry? Happy for anyone to jump in and answer that.
I think simply all of them, Heather. I think they're actually really reflective of what is happening out in industry and what we're seeing from a practice perspective on a day-to-day basis with our clients. So yeah, I think they're pretty accurate results.
Always comforting somewhat when what you feel is what's happening in the survey results. Anything to add to that, Brendan?
Yeah, I guess looking at all those percentages, the one that stood out to me is that the builder PO matching had the lowest percentage. That in my experience, POs are rarely used, and if they're used poorly. So I found that interesting as to where that sort of stood, because yeah, I thought it might have actually been a lot lower.
Fantastic, fantastic. And we do actually have 2 pages of survey results. So I will sort of move backwards and forwards between them, because so we can embrace what the 2 pages of survey results. I wonder, Mina, if you had anything to add to that, or if yep, go.
Sorry, I was just going to back Brendan's point there. To Brendan's point, we're also noticing at Xero that purchase orders are not being used actively, widely enough with SMEs. Even in my previous lifetime as a small business owner, I myself have been guilty of that. And it's a case of a mindset shift where a lot of SMEs think that because they're small, they can get to it later when they're growing, they're bigger, you know, when they're doing lots and lots and batches of orders. But it's important to get the foundations right early. So we definitely see that as well on our side.
We certainly see purchase orders being raised from some of the larger organisations, and particularly if our clients are dealing with any of the larger businesses, so mining companies, you know, government organisations, those things. That I think is where there's probably a bigger percentage of clients using POs. But yeah, absolutely, Mina. I think in the smaller businesses, if they're using them, it's because they think they have to issue a PO, but there's not necessarily any integrity around their PO process, around checking back to bills, or even checking dollar values in simple terms. So yeah.
Absolutely. And if you go back to the times when everything was manual, you could say, yes, there was more paperwork involved, and that's one of the reasons why people didn't do it. But with automation, that there shouldn't be any extra time, you know, involved that's going to make it ludicrous to actually do it. And the second thing is, a lot of people, small business owners, I had no idea that was legally binding to start with, and it could help me with dispute management if it ever was an issue with my suppliers. So it's just some education, simple education around what advisors can tell their clients to help them avoid trouble in the future.
Thank you for that. So I'm keen to know, we've talked about what we expected to see there. Are there any survey results that surprise you? And why do they surprise you?
I don't know whether I'm surprised or not surprised, and maybe I'm disappointed is perhaps a different word, that in this day and age that 3 in 4 businesses still don't have the right financial controls in place to protect their business. So am I surprised? No. Am I disappointed? Yes. And probably the reason I would say that is financial controls aren't just limited to the tech environment that we're working in today and the cloud solutions that we use today. I think the sense of financial controls should have been a legacy from older systems and become part of a business's DNA. But I don't think that's ever been the case, which is really, really disappointing, which is what then exposes businesses to financial risk. So surprised, no. Disappointed, yes. And I think what we've got to continue to try and do as an industry is to educate business owners as to the value of financial controls.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Cass. We don't want to be disappointing you, Cass. So everyone, please, businesses, do not disappoint Cass. Can you share a story or examples where a lack of internal controls has significantly impacted a small business? And how did it impact their operations or their financial stability? So have you come across businesses that are lacking these internal controls that have had troubles with that?
Look, I think we've all come across these types of examples, and I've got a couple that I've just floated up onto my screen, and I'll actually toss the links into the chat box so people can follow them through. And what disappoints me is that both of them have got bookkeeper in the title. The good news is they're not external bookkeepers, they're internal bookkeepers, but basically bookkeepers are defrauding clients' businesses. And there's one particular one about a Marie, who is a bookkeeper or was a bookkeeper within a construction business. $4 million she actually managed to defraud the business of, and then turned around and said to the client, it's actually or said to the business owner, it's your fault because you didn't have the right financial controls in place. So I've just popped the link in there. And this nearly sent the business bust, but it's no different to the Clive Peters payroll fraud that occurred probably, I think we're probably going on close to 15 years ago now with that. And the other comment I'd make too is it doesn't matter what your profile is out there in the world, you are still subjected to or can be subjected to fraud. And, you know, for anybody that's into the surfing community and in New South Wales there, Tyler and Owen Wright, who are two, you know, really high profile surfers, again, have had their bookkeeper defraud them of over $1.5 million. In both of these instances, simple financial controls could have actually prevented these from occurring or could have identified them much sooner in the cycle and minimized risk. Both the construction business and also the surfing people, it nearly took them to the wall. And that's just talking about the financial stresses that are on the business. That then doesn't talk about the emotional and psychological stresses that are imposed on the business owners, because people were able to commit fraud because there were a significant lack of financial controls.
Thank you for sharing those two stories, and they really resonate, I'm sure, with the community. Do you have anything to share, Brendan, about stories that you've come across that were situations that they lacked internal controls?
Look, so definitely, Heather. So the angle I was going to take from today is away from the fraud aspect, which, you know, is massive from an impact to the client's bank account. I've seen a number of clients where they've grown, and the way their financial controls worked was the CEO or the owner basically had full control over approving every single bill and authorizing all the payments. And what happens was, as that organization grew, their ability to keep their finger on the pulse of all the bills and all the payments and where they're up to and what had been incurred and what had been delivered, they couldn't do it anymore because the business had grown too big. But their only way of feeling comfortable was being in control of everything. And what that meant is I saw a number of clients where they ended up finding out they were approving bills twice, they were paying them twice, and that was causing them issues as far as obviously paying the wrong supplier, but their time was being used in the wrong area of their organization. It should have been focused on strategy and governance and, you know, managing the team, but they were too busy approving bills for, you know, an ink cartridge for $50. So I think that's where financial control can actually unleash and take the shackles off the CEO and actually bring some accountability to your team and allow them to have a bit of ownership and enjoy and in their role. You know, I've had another client where they had a number of funding streams, and so they each had their own budgets, but they never saw any of the bills that went against their account line until the end of the quarter. And then there was all these arguments of whose bills were what, because the bookkeeper did it all. So bringing approval max in allowed people to own their account code. And if you approved the bill and it wasn't your cost, well, you approved it to your funding source. So that's on you now. You've got to take responsibility. So I think that's the bit that I like about financial controls, is they really they allow you to grow and spread the accountability across your team. Because without them, you just can't grow fast. You just can't grow into the organisation that you want to become.
Mm. I actually like your comment there, Brendan, about spreading accountability across a team. And I think that's one of the challenges that many business owners face, particularly in high growth strategies or high growth periods of time, in that once they realize they don't have the capacity to do it themselves, they engage somebody else to do it, and it's generally a single person. And then all of that responsibility that they held has then transferred automatically to that other person without any checks and balances being in place. So I like the concept of accountability across a team, because it means you've got, we work in bookkeeping and accounting. We've got debits and credits. It's the check and balance on everything that we do. Accountability across a team is the debit and credit of financial control from my perspective there. So yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mina, did you have anything that you'd like to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. Just speaking from the small business days, when you think you're running a tightly controlled ship, that in your mind that could be that it's you, a partner in your business, and maybe two trusted employees, and you're giving too much power to a few people, and without that double checks and independent accountabilities spread across, it can be a massive risk. And then there's times when you think business is running smoothly, but when it's like you go on a holiday or you're having a baby or, some big life event happens and you hand the reins over to somebody in that trusted circle, that can expose you significantly. And I've actually had that happen to me in a previous business as well. So yeah, it's absolutely important to spread that accountability across and have double or triple checks in place, so it's not always the same person performing all the duties. Absolutely. Separation of duties is paramount.
I think if there's any small business owners on the call as well listening in, we're actually not suggesting that anybody in your business is intentionally trying to commit fraud or is doing it. However, I think statistically you'll find that most fraud is committed by somebody and somebody within your business. So sometimes even just getting an external review to come in, and this is where your bookkeeping or accounting partner can assist as well, to just come and run their eyes over your existing systems and see where those gaps are, can just give you peace of mind. But it may also identify somewhere where you are very, very heavily exposed, and they can suggest and provide you with strategies about how to mitigate that risk as well, and just give you peace of mind that allows you to sleep a little bit better at night.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you're in the position of having all of that control and having access to the client's bank account, that's a really stressful position to be in, and wasn't one I was ever comfortable with. And you frequently see people being pushed into that, and putting something like approval max or these controls in place helps everyone, sets their mind at ease. So 70% of businesses don't have automation to confirm receipt of goods and services before making payments. And 67% of businesses are not using automation to verify and approve suppliers. So what do you see as the consequences of the lack of automation in these processes around the receipt of goods and around the verification and approval of suppliers? Do you have any comments on that one?
I think the approval of suppliers one is interesting at the moment. And, because I sit in the bookkeeping world and we're often working with data retrospectively at times. So, we'll get the document after it's actually been paid. And one of the things I'm actually starting to see more of these days is suppliers that are refusing to quote ABN numbers. So to meet our compliance requirements, we should have valid tax invoices. And if we don't, we're supposed to remit 47.5% to the ATO. And if we don't do that, then the business potentially loses the deductibility of the expense. So we're having those conversations with clients after a supplier has been paid on a non-compliant document, where stepping through a supplier approval process in the first instance would actually remove and mitigate that risk. And we're seeing it in situations where we've got people that are claiming they're from these non-government, non-official, don't need an ABN, citizen of the world type. I call them the tinfoil hat people. But it's that sort of trading structure that is actually starting to become more prevalent. I think I've probably seen more of it in the last 12 to 18 months than I had in the last, 10 years. So protecting businesses from themselves sometimes is where you get the advantage of supplier approvals, making sure that everything's ticked and checked before you start committing money to your supplier, so that you don't get caught up in whatever it is they're potentially trying to avoid down the track. And when we talk with some of these businesses, we're not just talking 50 or $100 that is in question over an invoice. This could be thousands and thousands of dollars. And if the ATO decides to turn around and say, well, this supplier wasn't registered for GST, didn't have a valid ABN, you haven't withheld, and you're now going to lose the deductibility of that expense, that's a pretty significant impost on business. So a simple check at the beginning can actually save massive concerns and issues down the track. And that's where, Approval Max has got the really cool supplier approval functionality in it.
I imagine a lot of small business owners, especially in those early stages, have no idea if they're paying something without an ABN, they're supposed to be withholding a huge amount of that payment.
Yeah.
Now, Brendan, did you have any thoughts around that?
I've had a number of clients in the past where they've been caught with basically email interception. So the bill had been sent from the supplier to our client, and someone had hacked it along the way and then changed the invoice detail, the payment details of the invoice. So I've heard of that happening a couple of times. So I think having a process where you approve the supplier and verify the bank details is critical. And then talk about financial controls, and then who has the ability to change those bank account details. We talk about sort of opportunity before, Cassandra. I think that's really important, because what we want to do wherever possible is be proactive. There's some good things we can talk about being reactive to catch it, but let's stop it before it happens, because once the money's gone, particularly when they're overseas transfers, which one of them was for my client, it's almost impossible to get it back.
Absolutely. Did you have anything you would like to add to that, Mina?
Yeah, absolutely. We know how unsafe emails can be, and the risks of doing business over emails cannot be understated. And so Xero's also been involved in taking measures where we're working with the Australian New Zealand government on initiatives like e-invoicing, and that requires businesses that use the e-invoicing technology to register their ABNs and to get that checks done initially. And then also there's a network called Pebble Network. So it's far more secure. It's that extra layer of custom built network protection from invoices that are being sent and received. And that basically safeguards that the recipient and the supplier are matched and made sure that they are the actual ones that have been registered to trade between each other. So e-invoicing, I think it's a future for businesses. A lot of larger businesses are using it. Small businesses need to start adopting, and then it will become, hopefully in the future, a norm. At the moment, if you need to know more about e-invoicing with Xero, I'm happy to throw some links into the chat, but it is available on the Business Edition plans. It's inclusive of the Xero Business Edition subscription. So definitely look into that and learn how to get on board and register.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mina. And you can also use e-invoicing within Approval Max as well. So that's something, a really important sort of step forward to activate that and to be aware of it and seek the opportunities for using e-invoicing. So one of the stats is that 65% of businesses are not maintaining a robust audit trail. So what are the consequences of a poor audit trail practices, and what should be done there? Can I go to you on that, Mina?
Sorry, could you repeat that for me, Heather?
Sorry. 65% of businesses do not maintain a robust audit trail. And what are the consequences of a poor audit trail practice, and sort of what can be done about that? So we were talking about how there's limited options for in Xero, there's limited people have different access opportunities, but it's not as maybe robust as other solutions out there.
Absolutely. I mean, Xero does have an audit trail functionality, and we also have very good quality assurance in an assurance dashboard available to advisors to check anomalies. And we do encourage small businesses to look at the audit trail with their advisor, who has very good lens on what are these anomalies and how to identify them. But when you're growing and you need something more robust, we definitely also recognize that there are functionalities where our app partners in the ecosystem are experts in that area of financial control. So partnering with Approval Max definitely takes that audit trail financial control to the absolute next level. So I'm sure Cassandra can expand on the complexities of really nitpicking and going into the audit trails and seeing exactly where these and infer that there are activities going on that you need to investigate in more detail.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, Mina, the thing with that is no one part of this puzzle that is the complete silver bullet to mitigating risk. What you've got to do is look at the different layers of activity that are available in the software products or the processes that you're using. And, you start simply with things like user access and control. So in Xero, for instance, you've got different levels of access you can grant a user. Things like restricting the update on bank account details in Xero can be done. You then look at products like Approval Max, where you can then set another layer of approvals and controls around that, so that the person who needs to be involved in the process is only able to do what they need to do. That then links back to, you've got awesome audit trails, and actually both of the products, both Approval Max and in Xero, that if there's something that's not quite right, you've got the capacity to start to review that and see the history of everything that's been done. I love the audit trails in Approval Max because they transfer with the documents as well. But the thing I also love about Xero is that every transaction in Xero is tracked, not only who's actually performed the transaction, when it was performed, what were the consequences of that transaction. So the information is all there. It's ready for you to look at if you need to. But again, restricting, making sure the right people have got the right access to the right parts of the software that you're using is also a big step and part of that process as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And if I could just add, from a non-for-profit point of view, if you're a registered charity, you typically have to be audited. So having your audit trail within Xero, where the auditors can get access and see it all without having to ask you questions and approvals, makes things so much easier from an audit point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not happening within Xero, that's when you have the opportunity to lean on the ecosystem around Xero and tap into solutions like Approval Max to get that deeper level of audit trail that People for Business requires. So with that, segue straight into, what role do you believe technology plays in shaping financial controls within micro and small businesses? So what role do you believe technology plays in shaping financial controls within micro and small businesses? I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that, Brendan.
To me, it just makes it accessible to all. When you look at the monthly cost of some of these add-ons or the likes of Xero, to plug that into your business for the time it will save from doing it a manual way, which is just, and today with work from home environments and dispersed workforce, that's just not possible. And on top of that, for even the time saving, if you can just stop one payment going that shouldn't have, you've got your return on investment. So I think it's, if we're having this conversation maybe 10 years ago, you could say, yeah, look, you're probably not big enough, you're just gonna have to make do. I think now it's accessible to all. And hence where we started the conversation with Cassandra being disappointed. I echo those sentiments because it's accessible. And I think, to me, commercially, the numbers stack up to put these sort of things in place.
So, Brendan, you work in the not-for-profit space. And frequently we hear that they don't have money to spend on things. How are you convincing them to spend the money on technology to put these securities in place?
Look, when non-for-profits, they realize it's not their money. So a lot of them, they realize that they're sort of they're trying to protect the organization's money. So it's a bit different from a business owner's perspective. So they don't want to be the one that lets something happen and the money be inappropriately lost or spent. And because money is so tight, being able to keep an eye on everything a bit more closer will actually allow them to find where the fat is or where the padding has been occurring in the past, and that will pay for itself. So generally speaking, I can't recall a time from a non-for-profit where I've had pushback because they go, "Oh, that's great, let's do that," because they see the value. And I think it all comes back to just working through simple pros, cons, and what if we don't have it? And to me, that's a scary place to be.
Mm.
Cass, thank you so much for that, Brendan. Cass, do you have anything to add to how you believe technology plays in shaping the financial controls within business?
Just supporting Brendan's comment, it's certainly a cost-benefit discussion to have with clients about, a monthly subscription for something. If that saves you, as you said, $5,000 or $10,000 or $100,000, then it's paid for itself in a heartbeat. I think to a certain extent, technology, though, has made people a little bit lax around their thoughts with financial controls. There's almost a sense sometimes that, oh, we've got the tech in place, and I said earlier about user credentialing and those sorts of things, that it perhaps does provide at times a false sense of security. But again, I think tech has enabled businesses to step more cleanly into tools and processes that do support tighter financial controls. So it's this double-edged sword for some businesses. And I guess what frustrates me when I'm talking to a business is when we talk to them about, say, implementing Xero or other software within their business, they go, "Oh, no, I don't need that." And, "Oh, gee, that's a little bit of extra work to actually set that up and do these things." But then there's the same business owner that will scream and get really frustrated and peed off and, even quite angry at the bookkeeper when 6 months down the track, something occurs that sees them lose a significant amount of money. So I think we've got to, as an industry, we've got to continue to educate business owners on the value of technology, but also that technology can be an enabler, but if you're smart about how you're using technology, it can be incredibly valuable to your business around financial controls and give you absolute clarity. We've talked about audit trails, we've talked about accountability, all of those things. You've just got to start to use it and be prepared to engage with it for it to be successful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cass. Mina, did you have anything you'd like to add there?
No, absolutely. I just wanted to, second to Cassandra's point, technology is an enabler, but that doesn't mean that you take your foot off the pedal and not keep a vigilant eye on even things that are visibly going on in your business with your staff as well. You have to have a balance of course getting technology and also having the reins on your business and not letting oversight of key important areas. Technology is going to be getting better to the point where it's going to be flagging and bringing up more and more information about anomalies. So triggers and alerts and verification procedures. AI is really going deep into that area. So it's going to surface up things as close to real time as possible. And it's stuff like that you just sometimes you can't get that in sort of manual checks that you do. You really need to rely on technology to do the job as well with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, slide change. How can Approval Max and Xero help business owners overcome the challenges highlighted by the surveys and build stronger financial controls? So, how are you talking to clients, and what features and functionalities are helping them? Brendan, would you like to touch base on that one?
No worries. Look, so from my point of view, focusing on approval max, my conversation with clients is instead of having the old approve stamp, you can now make that something that works electronically. So you can set up your rules and go, I'll approve all these bills, but if it's over this amount, I'll approve it. Or if it's this person, I'll approve it. So just being able to really quick and easy, flexible, set up your rules. And when the bills come in, still my favorite feature of Approval Max is the budget checker. So if you're forecasting properly or budgeting within Xero, that feeds through to Approval Max. So every time I get a bill to approve, which is not too many now because I've delegated, but where it comes to my threshold, I can see straight away whether that's over or under my forecast for the month with that bill or how much I've got left to spend. So I've got my controls in that sense of I know how my business is running from a cost point of view and whether I want to make any changes rather than wait for the end of month reports.
I think we all want to know what your threshold is now, Brendan.
That's an offline conversation.
But one of the things I think you highlighted in there was we used to have the stamps or the chops for the approval, and you have to be physically there to do that, and it means you can just never go away. If you're on a cruise ship or something, you're never able to do the approval if it needs to happen, and it hits your threshold. Cass, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, again, I think what's important is that as providers to businesses, we understand our clients' businesses deeply. And when we're working with a particular client, what we're taking into that client is not just necessarily the knowledge of that client, but it's everything else that we've done for everybody else that we've worked with, and we've got that experience. So we know what best practice solutions are. We know what the tools are that are going to best support that client's business to build those financial controls in. And I think when we're talking about the likes of Approval Max and Xero with clients, because we've experienced it previously, we're able to really articulate the value that they can bring into a business. And in some instances, Approval Max won't be needed because the controls in Xero will be more than adequate. In other instances, you'd say, look, Approval Max is your best solution, and these are the reasons why. So, what does your client need? What are their levels of accountability? Why are they wanting these? Brendan's talked about budgets. We've talked about cost center management. We've talked about the right person in the right job, approving the right thing at the right time. All of those things build a picture within a client's business. And this is where solutions like Approval Max and Xero can really support a best practice methodology for those. So I think deeply understanding our business, but also deeply understanding the industry is really, really valuable when it comes to the tools that we're recommending to clients as well.
Absolutely. Did you have anything to add to that, Mina, from Xero's perspective?
I think from Xero's perspective, if you are obviously working with a certified advisor who can really guide you with, getting these controls set up and making sure that you're doing things on a more frequent and orderly basis with your bookkeeping. So even just healthy reconciling of accounts on a regular basis, using that quality assurance dashboard that is available when you have the advisor role. You can do simple checks for contacts with identical or edited bank accounts and backdated invoices. There's lots of checks in the system. It's just about the know-how and actually using Xero as a base and understanding what's available within there, giving e-invoicing a go as well. And then, of course, where you feel that it's lacking, where you need extra controls and that extra, level where Approval Max can come in and help supplement on things like the audit trail.
Yeah, absolutely. Something fun I heard the other day for any of you who are exploring ChatGPT or one of those large language models, you can put into it something like, this is my workflow, and you explain the workflow. And then you could say the question, where could I commit fraud? Or how could I commit fraud? But it has an ethics about it. So it won't actually tell you that, but it will suggest how to actually, it won't help you commit fraud, but it will make some suggestions for you. But you could also swap it around and say, where do I need to tighten up due to fraud? Just useful you have your own thought process for this, but also having something else come along and have banter and brainstorm with something like that. Now, we do encourage you, if you do have any questions, to ask them in the Q&A area. I would like to just bring one up that maybe someone can answer. Let's see. What software works with okay, it just disappeared on me. Maybe it just got answered then. Okay. I don't think any of the others that are sitting there are sort of questions for us. So then I will pop back here. But if you do have any questions, please drop into the Q&A area and I will ask them. Are you able to share with us a successful case study where the business integrated Approval Max and Xero, they enhanced their financial controls, and what were the tangible benefits observed? Cass, can I go to you on that one?
Yeah, mine is probably not a successful one ultimately, but a successful one in the beginning. In that we implemented Approval Max into a client who had absolutely no cost control whatsoever, and was providing services to developers and builders and major civil contractors. And when we started working with them, we couldn't trace anything. We were trying to find who authorized payments, who authorized bills, who authorized purchases. There was absolutely nothing there at all. We brought Approval Max in and started to put some boundaries and barriers around everything so that the bills that were coming through were being delegated to people within the organisation for approval. And more so than approval, also validation. So you can imagine we came in halfway through something. So there was all of this sort of historical stuff that was already coming through as well. What that flagged is obviously that they had really poor financial controls. What it also indicated though, was that they had no project control either. So it wasn't just the financial controls, but there was project control associated with that as well. Ultimately, what that led to was identifying that one of their, and it was an interesting situation because one of their major suppliers was also their major client. Really, really interesting scenario. And as a client, the client withdrew some licensing from this particular company, which meant they couldn't pay them, which meant then that they were unable to pay their suppliers who just happened to be the same company. Bit Irish, but it was actually a really interesting situation. So what it did mean is because this all came to a head, the company did end up going into liquidation at an earlier point of time than it would have. So it meant that there was whilst there was still significant financial liability to a number of suppliers and employees, it could have been worse if it had been left longer. So in this situation, whilst it's a good bad, it brought something to a head that had been festering for a long time. And just a simple check on what's being spent and why it's being spent and who it's being spent with really did change the profile.
Goodness, what an unusual situation.
It was very unusual. Yeah. The first time I've ever come across, supplier and customer. Different parts of the organisation were provided the different sides, but when one said no, it impacted on everything else as well. So yeah.
Goodness, what a difficult situation. And sometimes having the technology in place takes the personal feelings out of it somewhat.
Provides some absoluteness around it, I think, Heather.
Yes. Brenda, did you have any successful cases of where you businesses integrated Approval Max and Xero and enhanced their financial control systems?
Yeah, so a non-profit I have in Queensland. So the process before we got involved was bills got emailed sometimes to the bookkeeper, sometimes to the manager or the internal contact, and then eventually end up ready to be processed into Xero. Then at the end of I think they were doing fortnightly, a big batch of paper would then be collated with all the printed copies and then would be put on the CEO's desk to basically flick through it all and then to eventually approve the ABA batch. And then in between, she'd have to ring people or walk around and talk to people about different bills because she didn't know what was going on. So by bringing in Approval Max, we were able to get, they could then promote that all the bills could go electronically straight through. They were a central email address, which is getting auto forwarded the text. That was then being managed by accounts, and then Approval Max kicked in once it got published, and then it was going to the right program managers first. They knew what was going on, and then again setting the threshold. The CEO was only looking at the bigger ones. So then when she got to the back, she could still look at everything and look at anything in particular, even if it was below her threshold and she hadn't seen it before. But it changed her time where she had to block herself out every 2 weeks to make sure she was at her desk for payments day, because that's how people got paid. Now she had the flexibility. It wasn't that big of a task anymore. It meant she was looking at numbers at the right level. She wasn't down in the trenches, which is, that's not the role of a CEO. So she was able to do that better. And then we've now been able to have monthly ongoing meetings with those program managers, and they've already got a rough idea of what's going on because they've already seen the costs come through beforehand. So it really transformed them, and they've grown, I think probably 20 to 30% year on year for the last 3 or 4 years in revenue. And it's things like that that have meant they could grow without needing additional admin or accounting support to get that to happen. Because with some, funding and not-profits, very skinny margins at times, they would not be the organisation they were without that. I don't take all the credit, but that obviously that was part of the contribution to them growing to the size they are today.
Well, that's a fantastic story, and it sounds like you really freed up the CEO's mental capacity to focus on other areas and not just in that particular approval of everything.
Definitely.
Mina, did you have anything that you'd like to share here? Any successful cases where the two solutions have been integrated?
I actually don't have any off the top of my head.
No worries. No worries for that. So we're going to now move to Q&A. If anyone does have any questions, I'll shoot the slide over. And while we do that, can I ask for the to run the poll, if you could? And so we have a poll that we're going to have up on the screen. Are you interested in, there it is. Are you interested in learning more about Approval Max? And fantastic. So you can just type in there if you're interested in learning. I do welcome any questions. Okay, so we do have a question. Will Approval Max have a purchase requisition function soon? So that will have to go to the technical people at Approval Max to answer that question. I'm not I don't think anyone here will know the answer to that, but someone might respond to you. And then someone has asked, I get notified if I change a supplier's bank account in Xero, but can a notification be sent to my manager as well? I don't think it can be. I think it just goes out to one person. Anyone can add to that? I think it just goes out to one person.
Does it go out to all the advisors, Mina? From memory, I think that notification goes to advisors.
That's only for employee bank account detail changes, goes to advisors. So I think that's, I'll echo Paul's. That would be nice to have.
Yes, it would be. All of these sort of tiny little things would be nice to have, but they're all big, challenging to build, aren't they? To add the additional functionality wherever we need it. So,
but I will say, Paul, there is an audit trail in Xero that tells you if a supplier's bank account details have been changed. So I would have a look at that if you've got any concerns, and maybe just review it on a monthly basis if you've got any concerns around it as well.
Yeah, that's a sort of a good thing to add to your monthly checklist, isn't it? Quick run of that. So we're still running the poll. 100% answered, so I can stop running the poll. And I'll share results. Do I need to share results? Probably don't. I'll just shut it down. Okay. Thank you very much for running that poll. Now, with that, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such an informative webinar, and I'm sure it's been really beneficial for people listening in. What is one thing you would like listeners to take away from this session, and how can they get in contact with you? And while you're sharing how they can get in contact with you, I'll drop in your LinkedIn contact details in the chat area so they can just click and contact you, connect with you on LinkedIn. But can I start with you, Mina? If you could share, what's one thing that you would like people to take away, and how can people get in contact with you?
Look, the contact is really simple, mina.berry@xero.com. And I can basically help you a lot with any add-ons related to Xero. In my particular role, I'm working with wonderful software companies that integrate with Xero, and they're listed on the Xero App Store. So I can certainly give you some guidance around some great solutions that we have in market. In reference to this financial control sessions, I think if there's a lot of people who don't know about e-invoicing yet. So I think, if anything, check that out. See if it is, it's definitely relevant to businesses of all sizes, and it's probably a good idea to get on the journey, at least know about it. So we have chucked links in the chat, and we can probably bring one up again. So that's one takeaway from me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Mina. My friend is actually in Malaysia at the moment, and he's popping up all these photos of him talking to 1,000 people in a room about e-invoicing, which I was a bit shocked about. So I've been chatting with Simon Foster at Xero about e-invoicing. How they're all adopting it in Malaysia, and it's rare to see 1,000 people in a room talking about e-invoicing, but they like it in Malaysia. Well, they're listening in Malaysia. So a question has come through for you, Cassandra. Cassandra, where do we find the audit report for change in supplier bank accounts in Xero?
It is under settings and the assurance dashboard and the bank accounts.
Fabulous.
Bank accounts, is it? Contacts. Contacts? Actually, no. Oh, shoot me now. Yes, contacts. Assurance dashboard and contacts. Yep. It's one of those things that you go in and look at it, but when somebody says what are the steps you follow, you forget about it. But it's under the assurance dashboard and contacts, and you'll see contacts with the same bank account and also contacts whose bank accounts have been edited. So really, really valuable.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Cassandra. And can you also share with us one thing you'd like people to take away with from today's session and how they should get in contact with you?
Contact details, again, very simple. Bookkeepers, BOOKKEEPERS at laurus, laurus.com.au. But what I'd like people to take away is if you're within industry, start having these conversations with your clients if you haven't had them with before. So if you're a bookkeeper or an accounting practitioner, start the conversation with your clients around financial controls. And if you're an SME and you haven't thought about financial controls, don't start today. Tomorrow might be too late, so get onto it now.
And I'll add there, Cassandra's being modest. She moderates the largest bookkeepers in practice community in Australia. So you can ask her about that and see if you can join that as well, if you are a bookkeeper in practice. And Brendan, what's one thing you'd like people to take away from today's session, and how can they stay in contact with you?
No worries. Thanks, Heather. Look, hopefully everyone can take away from this that financial controls are important. And I think the part we've talked about is that the financial controls you had in place last year may not be appropriate now. So I guess it's whether you've got some in place or not, or you thought they're okay, revisit it and then schedule a time to revisit it again. So yeah, that continuous improvement mindset. I think that's really important. And it's already these sessions, I always start going, oh, maybe I need to do something with mine. I thought one were really good, but maybe I'll just go and double check so I can sleep better tonight. And then, so that's what I would suggest everyone takes away. And then to get in touch with me, either LinkedIn, happy to connect there, or Brendan at nextda.com.au. More than happy to have a chat about financial controls, because most of my mates don't want to, because they more want to talk about sport, which I do. But in this instance, happy to chat financial controls anytime.
Fantastic. And we also need to bring out Brendan spreading accountability. We all like that phrase from you, Brendan.
Awesome.
It's always good to take the words and explanations that we're using and sort of mirror them when you are having conversations with clients, because sometimes it's what resonates with the person, what's going to influence them, what's going to take them to this level and on this journey. So with that, I'd like to thank our guest panellists, Mina Berry from Xero, Brendan Lucas and Cassandra Scott, and everyone at Approval Max and Xero, with special mention to Eloise Craddock and Rochelle Bevis, who assisted in the development and production of this webinar. I'd like to encourage you all to connect with my fellow speakers and I on LinkedIn. Thank you for attending this webinar presented by Approval Max and Xero. Today's topic was how to protect your business with stronger financial controls. I'm Heather Smith and I've been your moderator for today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.